Hello, welcome back to the Villa View. It's time for a very special podcast as Steven Gerrard has been announced as the manager of Aston Villa Football Club today. So we've got a very, very special guest with us. We've got Andrew Simpson from the Ibrox channel and we've got Chris Dolan as ever. Not quite as special, and there's probably a joke about an Englishman, an Irishman and a Scottish man somewhere to be had, but I'm not going to do that. We'll start with you, Andrew. Thank you for coming on because I presume you're a little bit upset.
Well, yes, we always thought this day was going to come, that we were going to lose Steven Gerrard at some point. But I didn't think we'd lose him so soon, and especially within a few days. So, yes, it was a bit of a shock, but we're going to, onwards and upwards, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to come on to everything he's achieved at Rangers and what the Villa fans can expect. And Dolan, Andrew just alluded to it, all happened very quickly in the end. Villa identified Steven Gerrard as the number one target. And if there's one thing about this Aston Villa hierarchy and this Aston Villa board, they get things done quite quickly. They don't mess around.
I mean, part of me thinks that maybe he's been sounded out for the last few weeks. I think, as everyone seems to allude to, I don't think it was exactly the 5 in a row that we've just gone through. I think it was almost a capitulation from how good we started the season, and then the stats for 2021 are pretty alarming, and I think as this ownership have constantly demonstrated, is it's all about progression, and in their eyes, and I think in a lot of the fans' eyes, there was to start of the season, there just hasn't been that progression since January, and especially since the start of the season, and obviously. It's tinged with sadness, but because we've lost a great man in Dean Smith, but it's also a day of excitement, and it's just great to see Villa all over the media, and it's an exciting appointment, and only time will tell. But firmly believe I think you'll do a great job, and. What a player! Like to have someone like Steven Gerrard as the manager of your football club. It's quite a name, isn't it? In world football.
Yeah. And I should say at this point, Dolan says we've been on the media all day. I should apologise because there's probably people that are absolutely sick to death of watching me and hearing from me today. So I can only apologise for that. Let's bring Andrew back in. Actually, before we bring Andrew back in, a quick word for our sponsors, Luke Roper. Thank them as ever for backing the channel. And if you do want to treat yourself to some Luke Roper goods, if you use the code TVV20, you will get 20% off most items. Bring Andrew back in then. Steven Gerrard came in 3 and a bit years ago.
Yeah,
I think it was. Overall, did he surpass your expectation of where you thought he'd leave Rangers after that 3 years?
Yes, I think mainly it's a little bit divided, but I would say yes, because that the plan was when he came in was to try and win the title within 3 years. Now, he had a massive rebuild job on his hands after we had Pedro Caixinha and we had Graham Murty, who was interim in charge. And since the administration in 2012 and coming back up through the leagues, we'd never really found our feet again. Gerrard came in, and to be fair, very quickly managed to establish the team together quite well, a style of play that was very attacking. And, that season straight away when he came in, we were straight into the Europa League, which is something we hadn't seen in years. So, yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, and how impressive as a manager, but as a man, how impressive has he been at Rangers? Because it always strikes me that I felt he got Rangers, he understood what Rangers were about, he dedicated himself to that fan base in the time he was there.
Fans absolutely love it. You just off every word that he says, he seemed to have it in his blood, like he did with Liverpool, like he does with Liverpool. Especially after things he has said, especially when we won the title, it was he was eager for more. I know he was disappointed with the cup competitions because we never actually won a domestic trophy other than the league. But the fans absolutely, he loved it. He loved it. He was almost a fan himself. He saw the passion when we beat Celtic at Celtic Park back in 2019, which was the first time in the back end of a decade, and he was just absolutely screaming into the camera. Yeah, he loved it.
Yeah, and Dolan, how important is it going to be that he embeds himself into Villa? I think he will. I think that is just his character. Once he's in something, he's all in. He doesn't mess around, and Villa will be his life now. Will be so dedicated to putting Villa back up to where we want to be. But how important is that? Because we've obviously lost a manager who was one of us because he was a Villa fan. He did understand the fabric of the club. Steven Gerrard, even though he's not a Villa fan, I think he'll quite quickly embed himself in.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the guy's a winner, and I think what's been lacking at our football club over the last decade is that winning mentality, and bringing that into the football club. And I think we've seen over the past decade, there's been a lot of players that have taken the football club for a ride, and Gerrard doesn't seem to suffer fools gladly. And when I say that, I don't mean he manages with fear. I just think it's the standards that he sets. I think it's the standards that he sets personally, professionally. You look back at his career, yes, he didn't win a league title at Liverpool, but for me, you look at someone like Frank Lampard and what he won, and then Steven Gerrard versus what he's won. There's something about Steven Gerrard for me. There's just something about him. There's an aura about him. There's a presence about him that excites me, and I've always been a massive admirer of him as a player. I just loved his desire and his attitude, and the fact that he could have gone to Chelsea back when just after they won the Champions League, and I'm sure Rangers fans won't agree, but he was loyal. He was loyal then to Liverpool, but I think most Rangers fans will understand. I think a club like Villa, he's not going to get a top 4 or a top 6 job at the minute, and we all know that Scotland as a league is mainly 2 or 3 clubs, and it's just not on the same level or in the same league as the Premier League. And Gerrard belongs in the Premier League. He belongs at the top level. And yes, Rangers can provide Europe, and yes, he'll probably be in the Champions League next season, but I think he belongs domestically at the very, very top level. And I just think it's the right fit. I think it's the right fit. Only time will tell. But I think what we need at the minute is to be galvanized. And I think if there's one thing he can do, is he can galvanize that team, and he can galvanize the club. And I'm just really excited just to see, his brand of football. And I'm sure Andrew can sort of talk more about that as well. I believe he plays a 4-3-3, and he's obviously quite expansive. But we all know Rangers are going to, Rangers dominate 90% of football games. Rangers win more games than they lose. So he's going to have to get used to not dominating games of football. He's going to have to get used to possibly losing more games than he's used to. But I think he has all the right attributes, and he's walking into a club not just owned by sort of the 4th or 5th richest owners in the league, but he's walking into a club with probably one of the best academies in world football, some of the best training facilities in the country. And again, credit to Dean Smith and credit to the owners. It's usually unheard of that a manager leaves a club in a much better state than he found it in, and Dean Smith has done that. We are a club now. You can walk in, and it's the perfect job. I mean, what a job to come into Aston Villa with the owners we have, the money we have, the players we have, the squad, the fan base. It's he just couldn't have turned it down. It just would have been impossible.
Yeah, we're going to hear from Steven Gerrard next week. The press conference is scheduled for next week. It won't be tomorrow. Villa have said that it will be next week. Andrew, can you just talk to us a little bit about his playing style, his tactical style, how he likes to line up?
Yeah, well, as you said, he does play with a 4-3-3. He has it's been more of a 4-3-3 of late. He did originally use, I think it was a 4-2-3-1, where we used to have Morelos up at the top. But he started with the defence. The defence was the foundation. He and Gary McAllister identified that area was key. As before they came in, we weren't too bad at scoring goals, but we were conceding way more. We play the ball on the ground from the back. Goldson, our right-sided centre-back, he's very good with the ball at his feet. He comes forward and distributes, so that's another thing that they like with the playing style. We like to work the ball back from the goalkeeper and pass it through from the back. Our wing backs push forward, much like, I guess, like with most modern teams. Most modern wing backs do push forwards. We like to use our wingers as extra strikers. So Gerrard likes players that can cut in, take on men, like we have with Ryan Kent, Joe Aribo, that can take on man and be like extra strikers, while the fullbacks come in and fill them areas and act as wingers. It's out of possession. We hunt in packs. We try and win the ball back, close players down, and inevitably force mistakes. Teams do find it hard to penetrate when we are very good at shutting teams out, and the stats prove that. Whether in Europe or domestically, we don't generally concede much. This season aside, we have had a little bit of a bit of a defensive wobble this
Join
year.
the club.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. In Scotland, we have a bit of an issue, which took Gerrard a couple of seasons to kind of fix, and that's the packed defences. Unfortunately, teams in Scotland don't have great budgets, so when we go to the Hamiltons, the St Mirrens, the Livingstons, they play quite defensively, go for a low block. They're happy for us to have the ball, and we have to try and break them down. We get very bogged down in these games, and the ball was moving from side to side. We would struggle to get along with that. But and we were struggling to find the answer to that. When the season was ended due to COVID back in 2020, we had just lost at home to Hamilton 1-0, which was a bit of a shock. We were 13 points behind Celtic at that point. Gerrard did look devoid of ideas, and he did say at the end of that defeat, he'll have to take a long, hard think. And we all thought, well, maybe he's thinking about the job and everything. But then when the shutdown came along, him, Michael Beale, McAllister, they used that time wisely. They looked at the team, and they looked at ways of opening up teams more. Alfredo Morelos was a little bit key to this, because originally we were using him as the kind of sole goal scorer because he was the banging in goals every game. But then we were using him to hold up the ball more and bring the rest of the team into the play. We then started to at least allow for space for people to fall into, to work into, and we started opening up teams a bit better. We started to play a bit more intricate 1-2 passes, triangles, and we really did start to destroy teams. We started adding a bit more variety to the way we play, and we finally did crack the code, but it did take about 2.5 seasons.
But he was given time. I guess that's the important thing all managers need, that they need that time. I mean, he'll face different problems at Villa. Obviously, Villa don't come up against a low block quite as often as I imagine Rangers do. But can you I know Dolan's keen on this. Can you tell us a bit about Beale, a bit about Gary McAllister, how important have they been? Because I know Gerrard's kind of more the figurehead, isn't he, of the setup? They're like a one big team, but when we say team, they all have the specific roles, the specific jobs.
Yeah, definitely. Gerrard is what I would say is the face and the motivator, the guy issues in regards, if he has to speak to somebody, if there's any performance issues, things like that. McAllister's obviously the right-hand man there, but Beale is the brains. He's the tactician. He's the guy that takes training. He works with the team on the daily basis. I think one of the players before, Andy Halliday, said that, he'd be up at 6 a.m. planning the day's training before they get in at 9 o'clock. And then he'll go home and watch like Argentina under 18s. And, he was very, he's very into the tactical side of the game. There has been some pieces that have been on the internet before where he has been speaking about tactics in the game, because he's been out in Brazil. He was at Sao Paulo as assistant there, which is obviously culturally very different, especially footballing wise. And obviously, Gary McAllister from obviously back at Villa under Hooley, and then of course he was interim manager as well. He just always seems to have been Gerrard's right hand man, and just that team. We all knew when Gerrard, the inevitable when he'd leave, which to be fair we thought probably would be Liverpool, that they'd all go together. And obviously, sadly for us, that is the case, because I think Beale is the one that is the genius, so to speak. Yeah, he was highly rated at Liverpool. Jamie Carragher, absolutely, spoke highly of him there. He was very involved with every level there at the academy at Liverpool.
Yeah, it does sound like Beale is the real deal, and he's been linked with a few jobs actually recently, hasn't he? I think he's been linked quite heavily with the Cardiff job. I think one day he actually does want to go on and be a manager, but by what you're saying, Andrew, it sounds like he does a fair bit as a coach. But it's integral, isn't it, Dolan, that a manager gets all the staff that he wants as well. There's no point getting in the manager without him having the team around him that has proved to be successful previously.
Absolutely, and these managers now they come with a squad themselves. You know,
Yeah.
they come with the big backroom staff, and gone are the days when it was just the manager that was coming in. But now you're bringing a manager and at least 4, 5, 6, 7 other staff. Just on that, I was speaking to Neil Cutler earlier on, and he said he's definitely staying, which is great news. So
Uncle Neil.
He has big cuts has worked wonders with Martinez and the entire goalkeeping team at Villa. So that's great news, because he's a real top coach, and thought of very, very highly in the game. But I think you're right. It'll just be really interesting. Kind of, I want to hear more now from Gerrard. I want to hear from Gerrard in an Aston Villa seat. I want to hear what he's got to say.
You will next week.
And I want to, I want to know what the plans are. But people are now kind of saying, "Oh, is this a stepping stone? Is this a stepping stone?" If Gerrard comes to Villa for 3 years, and after those 3 years gets the Liverpool job, it's only going to mean one thing: he's done an amazing job at Aston Villa.
It doesn't worry me at all.
He's not going to get the Liverpool job if he comes to Villa and keeps us top 10, top 12, because he won't even be in the Aston Villa job come 2-3 years time. But if he joins us and works wonders and ends up going to Anfield in 3 or 4 years time, then it's only because he's done an incredible job at Aston Villa. So for me, it's a win-win, and it's not a stepping stone. It will just be the natural progression. It'll be the next step. So for me, that's not what's hearing sort of that sort of lazy journalism being branded about. Is this the stepping stone to Liverpool? But for me, no. It'll be the stepping stone to another big job if he performs anywhere close to how he performed at Rangers.
Yeah, it's not something that concerns me at all. I think, you can't complain about it either when, we've just done the same thing to Rangers, essentially.
Exactly.
If Liverpool then come and do that to us, it's just the circle of football life.
Exactly.
That's the way it goes. Was Beale, am I right in thinking Rangers maybe would have fancied Beale to be Gerrard's replacement?
Yes, they would have. That was definitely something that, was spoke about over the past couple of years, because we've kind of resigned ourselves to that Gerrard would go at some point. But I think in the back of our minds, I think we all knew they'd all go together, which is sad in a sense, but because it's left a big hole now that needs to be filled up at Ibrox. And but you know what, you'll benefit from it at Aston Villa, because they work together very well.
Yeah, I don't want to kick you while you're down. But obviously, we know when a new manager comes in, you think, oh, maybe he'll take a couple of players from his old team. Do you think there's anyone at Rangers that he might look at bringing in?
Well, I know that Ryan Kent.
He's the logical one, isn't he?
Yeah, we got him on loan from Liverpool back in, I think it was 2019, and he was just phenomenal. And we ended up buying him for 7 million, which, to be fair, doesn't seem like a lot of money in the Premier League, but for Rangers, that was a lot of money to fork out for. Yeah, we even turned down Leeds a couple of times. I think Leeds had a £10 million bid for him at the time, and he did a couple of times. I don't know if it was an actual official bid, but there was rumours at the time that Leeds were interested. I think the Gerrard effect, I think players wanted to be there to play for Gerrard, and I think that's something now where you might have somebody like even Connor Goldson. I know he's not really had the best season this year, but he was our rock of our defence last year. He was absolutely fantastic. I could see him potentially coming down here. Glenn Kamara, who we purchased for £50,000 from Dundee, who's Finland international. He's absolutely fantastic. I think Arsenal were even interested in him in the summer. I do think we could lose those three mainly. Yeah, it's. I'm going to start crying in a minute, but
it's horrible to think about for you. I guess at this point, so raw as well. Who just out of interest, do we know who the Rangers might replace him with?
Well, do you know what? Believe it or not, one at the minute, the favourite seems to be Giovanni Van Bronckhorst.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, the name Dean Smith's been mentioned as well, so you never know if that does happen. There might be another crossover podcast, possibly. I just hope it's done quickly. Yeah, he's also been mentioned as well.
Yeah, I think that's what those kind of clubs need, and it didn't really particularly work out with Neil Lennon in terms of like ex-players going back, but I think a club like Rangers, it just needs a figurehead to galvanise the entire club, and you've seen some of the appointments you've made over the last sort of few years, and they've been atrocious, and I think when you manage teams like Celtic and like Rangers and any of the big clubs, you need to get it, you need to understand it. And for me, someone like Van Bronckhorst coming in is a perfect fit. You've even got people like Laudrup there you could get back. Managers with really, really good pedigrees who can just kick on. Because as somebody said in the comment box as well below, Gerrard's left Rangers in one hell of a healthy position as well. He's left a club where somebody can walk in and not have to change an awful lot. And keep the same setup, keep the same players, keep the same formation. They're still in Europe. Got a cup semi-final coming up next week, and they're easily once I think they find their form in the league, which they haven't yet. I don't think. Then there's no doubt you can go on and win the league, and then as we know in Scotland next season, you win the league, you're in the Champions League
straight in there, aren't you?
Yeah.
And financially, that is like winning the treble. Again, what a job to take on, and the words from where Gerrard got Rangers, where he what he inherited was a mess. It was a shambles.
It was.
I follow football across all leagues, but obviously I've always kept an eye on Rangers and Celtic. Being from Belfast, there's always been that Rangers and Celtic. So there's I've always known what's been going on, and it was a shit show. So from we talk about Gerrard and people have said, oh, well, he's only won one trophy in 9. I look at it as in he's closed the gap beyond all recognition. Like, it was that they were a laughing stock, Rangers in that division, and he came in and he made them popular again amongst not only the Rangers fans but amongst football fans. And some of those
I agree.
Some of those European nights that you've had as well, some of those victories that you've had in Europe, it's absolutely incredible. So what a job for anyone to walk into. What a great job. So for me, I'm sure you're gutted, but it's not like he's left you in the lurch in the sense that you're in a mess. I think he's left you in a phenomenal position. And I actually didn't realize he'd been there for 3.5 seasons, which is again quite a lengthy time for a modern manager these days to stay with a club. Right. So for me, can't really knock the guy, But again, listen, we've lost managers over the years and players over the years, like Jack Grealish. That was such a tough one to take. But once you get your first victory under your belt with the new manager, I think you'll be, we'll get beat by Brighton and you'll smash whoever you're playing next, and it'll be like, oh yeah. But I think you'll be absolutely fine, mate.
Well, I think what Gerrard did, he did quite well, was he understood how it is in Scotland. It's a goldfish bowl up there. If you have a couple of draws and a loss, you're in a crisis. There's been many managers that have gone up there before, with the Premier League pedigree, like John Barnes. It didn't work out for him at Celtic. Gerrard has that Premier League experience. He knows what he's coming down to now at Villa. He knows the club. He knows the league. The next few games are going to be very interesting. And to be fair, the first game against Liverpool is going to be one hell of a game, I think.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about the European nights? Because that's where we want to get to ultimately. We'd like to be knocking around the Europa League, having some European football back at Villa Park. What were they like? Fantastic.
One of the best games, straight to the head, was the Porto match at home, where we won 2-0. And the thing what was funny was those seasons, especially because I think that was the 2019-2020 season, we were struggling in the league. and we'd be drawing games, dropping points, needless points everywhere. But in Europe, we were doing very well because of the attacking play of football. Because we weren't playing against packed defences, it worked much better. We're playing against attacking teams, they leave themselves a little bit more open. But Gerrard, he's got that ethos of attack. Attack is the best form of defence. And there was one thing we did when we finally did beat Celtic for the first time in, however how long. He called it empty the tank. We put in an empty the tank performance, and that created a psychological shift. And then almost like we lost that fear of playing Celtic. And to be fair, they haven't beaten us in 2 years now. And it was a bit similar to that in Europe. We didn't have a fear. There was no expectation for us to do anything in Europe. And we seemed to play better with that. Obviously, that's more of a psychological thing. You're experienced in Europe from, obviously in the past, you've had many, wonderful occasions in Europe. So, I think Gerrard is somebody that can get you into obviously the Europa League. And obviously I know there's not as many people like it, but there is the Europa Conference as well. He's obviously very experienced in that area, and we did get to the last 16 2 years in a row. But I think we just ran a little bit on empty when we got to them points, I think.
Yeah. We've done a good job of upsetting you so far on this podcast. Let's cheer you up a little bit, because you must be excited for him to work with John McGinn, I guess. That must be quite exciting for you.
Yeah. The McGinn brothers themselves are also very well known in Scotland, and obviously John McGinn is fantastic. He's been phenomenal for Scotland. We're actually starting to get a national side together where we're starting to actually get some decent players together now, and I just hope we can qualify, for the World Cup. We always seem to put in a good performance, much like Aston Villa, to be fair. We'll put in a good performance against the big teams, and then we'll go to some outpost and probably lose 2-0. But that's the life of a Scotland fan for you.
What's in his in tray then, Dolan? He's got a few things that he needs to work on. The defence at the moment being one of the main ones. I mean, to be honest, I say the defence, the midfield and the attack needs a little bit of work at the moment, but the players are there. They're not bad players. We've just hit a really bad run of form.
Yeah. I think that would have been a big remit for him. Is he doesn't need to spend huge amount of money, because the squad's there, like the talent's there. I mean, there's a few positions that we need to improve on, and he'll want to bring in his own personnel. But there's a few things. Does he keep Mings on as captain? That's another thing.
I'd have thought so.
But for me, our biggest weakness has been, and pretty much throughout my Villa. My Villa supporting life has been our midfield, and we've never really, we've always had like one or two quality players that have ended up sort of moving on, but it's just getting that midfield right, and it wasn't addressed in the summertime, and you saw against Southampton. I mean, to see Southampton just rip us to shreds and just play through us was a hard watch. And if there's one thing you can do, it's improve the midfield. And I think once we improve the midfield, then everything then tightens up. I think it must be a nightmare as that back four / back five, having no protection, absolutely no protection in front of you. Players are just running right past our midfield, completely bypassing us. So I was saying off air there, could you imagine, again, not only for Gerrard, but for players like Jacob Ramsey and Chukwuemeka, and even Sanson might get a look in. There are some really, really good midfielders at our football club, but I just don't think they've been utilised in the right way. But there's some talents, there's some talented midfielders there, especially in the academy. And imagine being coached by someone like Steven Gerrard. It'll be something. It'll be exciting. But the big thing for him is get a settled formation, get the players fit, get them fit, because we just look miles off it in terms of fitness, miles off it. So those are the two big things. Get that settled formation, get the team back fully fit, and once we've got a full strength squad to choose from, then I think we'll be okay.
Andrew, delighted to hear that we've got problems in midfield after what you said about Kamara. Just music to your ears, wasn't it?
Oh, as long as it's not 50k you want to pay for him, then that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might be making a bit more than 50k this time around. 20 million. 20. He might be. I can't claim to have seen absolutely loads of him, but again, he feels like a logical January transfer to me. What kind of midfielder is he?
Oh, he's just a joy to watch. He's somebody that's eager to get the ball, push forward, and just he would take a man on. He's very intricate. He works very well with Joe Aribo, who we got from Charlton a couple of years ago. He's just a very solid midfielder. He used to play quite well with Ryan Jack, in a defensive way. Gerrard used to play them that way first, so he used to hold Kamara's kind of, I guess, ability back a little bit because he would have him a bit more defensively minded, but attacking, he's fantastic. He scored a great goal against Benfica last season, and to be scored against Ross County as well there at the last weekend. And yeah, no, he's a fantastic player. He's somebody as well you can see that can go so far. Arsenal were interested in him. I think he probably would be a good fit in an Arsenal team. You can see with the way he plays. But yeah, he could potentially sort out Villa's problems.
Yeah. No, just on that, Andrew, are there any players in Scotland in general at the minute that, you know, obviously Gerrard will know the league and he'll know the squads inside out. Are there any players that you could see, making that step up to the Premier League, not just at Rangers, but across the SPL?
Maybe possibly O'Donnell at Motherwell. Possibly, maybe not for Aston Villa. He's like a right back. He plays for the Scotland national team. It's probably a few players maybe over at Hibernian because they play like a kind of attacking football.
Yeah. No one's
sticking out at the minute. Yeah. Possibly, I would say maybe a couple of people at Celtic, to be fair, maybe Furuhashi, but then he's only just joined there this year. He seems to be banging in some goals very fast. But yeah, it will be interesting. I think for Gerrard, the biggest thing is the connection to Liverpool and the potential loan deals that you might get from there, because, you know, we went through, we had like Ovie Ejaria, Joe Ojo, obviously Ryan Kent. And it was fantastic because obviously with loan deals, you know, a couple of them didn't really work out. Then they just go back to Liverpool. Obviously, Liverpool will want to see some development, obviously. And, you know, that could be something where, you know, it might work for both parties where, you know, Gerrard with his connections might bring over a few players because, you know, they have got a fantastic academy over there and their reserve team are brilliant as well. So
just before we depart, what would you say is the single best attribute of Steven Gerrard as a manager? I realise that's a killer question just to put you on the spot there, but what's the one thing that you would say makes him stand out as a manager?
I think his aura. I think players just eat out of his hand. I think he has a dressing room. You know, I look back to Istanbul. Now, this is when there was talk of us getting Gerrard. You know, it was pretty much, I think, written off by a lot of people. Now he won't come to Scotland. And I said, you know, I'd love him. You know, when you look at Istanbul, you know, 3-0 down at halftime, you know, we all remember that game and Gerrard just willing that team, you know, on. And you could see it, you know, he was screaming, shouting. That's a manager that you want. That's somebody you want to motivate a team. You know, he's very, you know, players will listen to him. Players will eat out of his hand, you know. And I think, especially when you've got him as a motivator, Michael Beale as the tactician, I think you're not going to go too far wrong. Sadly.
Yeah, I will say actually some good podcasts out there. I watched the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphrey and Steven Gerrard yesterday. It's a really, really good watch if you want to know more about his character. There's also the film, Gerrard the Movie. I think that's knocking around on Amazon as well. I actually happened to watch that recently anyway before I knew anything about Steven Gerrard coming to Villa. So yeah, there is a lot of media out there. If you do want to look at it, Villa fans, the High Performance podcast is well worth a watch, and I'm sure that'll get a lot of fans very, very excited. So thanks for joining us today, Andrew. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks as ever to Dolan as well. And a final thanks to our sponsors, Luke Roper, who continue to back us. Get 20% off at Luke with the code TVV20. 20% off full price items, 20% off stuff in the sale as well. So that's an extra 20%. So yeah, go and check that out. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy the weekend. We'll be back next week with some content and up the Villa.